What if Anakin saved Mace Windu from Palpatine? Let's explore the depths of this scenario in the video. The golden sunset of Coruscant casts long shadows through the towering spires of the Senate District. But for Anakin Skywalker, the beauty of the galactic capital holds no comfort. His footsteps echo hollowly through the marble corridors as he makes his way toward Chancellor Palpatine's office. Each step heavier than the last. The weight of revelation presses down upon him like the gravity of a collapsing star. Just hours ago, his world had been turned upside down. The man he had trusted above all others. The mentor who had guided him through his darkest moments. The father figure who had understood him when even the Jedi Council seemed distant and cold, had been revealed as the very evil they had been fighting against for 3 long years of bloody war. Palpatine is a Sith Lord. The words echo in Anakin's mind like a death knell, each repetition driving the truth deeper into his consciousness. Every conversation they had shared, every piece of advice given, every moment of understanding and compassion, all of it had been a carefully orchestrated deception designed to corrupt him and turn him against everything he had sworn to protect. The visions plague him still. Even now, as he walks through the pristine hallways where senators and their aides hurry past with urgent business, he can see Padmé's face contorted in agony, her life slipping away as she brings their child into the world. The images are so vivid, so real, that he can almost hear her labored breathing, almost feel the cold touch of death that seems to surround her in these prophetic nightmares. She is going to die. The certainty of it cuts through him like a vibroblade. Unless he acts, unless he finds a way to save her, the woman he loves more than life itself will perish, and their unborn child will never know their mother's touch. The future stretches before him, dark and empty, filled with loss and regret that would consume him for the rest of his days. And Palpatine, Darth Sidious, the master manipulator who has orchestrated the galaxy's suffering, claims to hold the key to preventing this tragedy. The power to save lives, to cheat death itself, lies within the dark side of the Force. It is a power the Jedi would never teach, a power they would condemn as unnatural and evil. But what is natural about watching the person you love die when you have the ability to prevent it? The internal conflict tears at Anakin's soul as he approaches the final corridor leading to the Chancellor's office. Behind him lies the path of the Jedi, the way of peace and serenity, of accepting loss as part of the natural order. Ahead lies the promise of power, the ability to control fate itself and ensure that those he loves will never be taken from him again. His mother's face flashes through his memory. Shmi Skywalker, who had suffered and died in the hands of Tusken Raiders while he was away, playing at being a Jedi. He had failed to save her, arriving only in time to hold her broken body as she breathed her last. The rage that had consumed him in that moment, the way he had slaughtered not just the warriors who had tortured her, but their women and children as well, had been his first real taste of the dark side's power. The Jedi had forgiven him for that moment of weakness, or at least they had chosen to overlook it. Master Obi-Wan had counseled patience and meditation, urging him to let go of his anger and find peace in the Force. But the fear had never truly left him. The terror of losing someone else he loved had festered in his heart like an infected wound, growing stronger with each passing day. Now that fear threatens to consume him entirely. Padmé, beautiful and brilliant Padmé, who had seen past the angry young slave boy to the man he could become. She had loved him despite his flaws, despite the darkness that lurked within his heart. She had married him in secret, defying both Jedi doctrine and political protocol, because she believed in their love and their future together. And now that future hangs by a thread, dependent on choices that seem to offer only pain and compromise. Save Padme by embracing the dark side and becoming everything the Jedi stand against, or remain true to the light and watch helplessly as she dies in childbirth, just as his visions have shown him time and time again. The sound of lightsaber combat echoes from within Palpatine's office, snapping Anakin from his tortured thoughts. Master Windu's voice, strained with effort and righteous anger, carries through the heavy doors. The Chancellor's replies are harder to make out, but there is something in his tone that sends chills down Anakin's spine. Gone is the kindly, grandfatherly warmth that has characterized every conversation they have shared. In its place is something cold and predatory, something that speaks of vast intelligence and even vaster malice. Anakin's hand moves instinctively to his lightsaber hilt as he prepares to enter the office. Whatever he finds inside will determine not just his own fate, but the fate of the entire galaxy. The Clone Wars, which have raged across countless worlds and claimed millions of lives, hang in the balance. The Republic, that 1,000-year-old beacon of democracy and justice, teeters on the edge of transformation into something unrecognizable. He takes a deep breath, centering himself in the Force, as Obi-Wan had taught him so many years ago. The energy field that binds all living things together flows through him, but it feels different now, clouded by his emotions and fears. The light side calls to him, offering peace and acceptance, but it also demands sacrifice. The dark side whispers promises of power and control, of the ability to shape the galaxy according to his will. The doors slide open with a mechanical hiss, revealing a scene that will be seared into Anakin's memory for the rest of his life. Master Mace Windu stands over Chancellor Palpatine, his purple lightsaber humming with deadly energy, as it hovers mere inches from the older man's throat. The office is a wreck, furniture overturned, and walls scarred by the fury of their battle. But it is Palpatine himself who draws Anakin's attention. Gone is any pretense of frailty or weakness. Though he appears to cower before Mace's blade, his yellow eyes burn with Sith fire, and the air around him fairly crackles with dark side energy. This is no helpless old man, but a predator who has been forced to drop his disguise. Master Windu, Anakin calls out, his voice barely steady as he takes in the scene. What's happening here? Mace doesn't turn from his quarry, but his voice carries the weight of grim determination. Chancellor Palpatine is a Sith Lord, Anakin. He is the one we've been looking for. He's been playing both sides of this war, manipulating the Republic and the Separatists for his own ends. The words hit Anakin like a physical blow, even though he had already known the truth. Hearing it spoken aloud, seeing the evidence before his eyes, makes it impossible to deny or rationalize away. The man who had been like a father to him, who had offered guidance and understanding when the Jedi Council seemed cold and distant, had been using him all along. You're going to kill him? The question tears itself from Anakin's throat, laden with all the anguish and confusion that has been building within him. Palpatine seizes upon the opening with the skill of a master manipulator. Yes, my boy, he says. his voice taking on the familiar tones of paternal concern that have comforted Anakin through so many dark moments. Master Windu is going to kill me. The Jedi way is apparently to execute an unarmed prisoner without trial or due process. But Anakin can see through the deception now. The Chancellor is far from unarmed, his command of the dark side evident in every gesture and inflection. More importantly, the young Jedi can feel something else through their connection, something that makes his blood run cold. The visions, the nightmares that have tormented him for weeks, showing him Padme's death over and over again. They don't feel like natural prophecies anymore. There is a taint to them, a dark side signature that he recognizes now that his eyes have been opened to the truth. "You sent them," Anakin says, his voice growing stronger as understanding dawns. "The visions of Padme dying. You've been planting them in my mind." Palpatine's mask slips for just a moment, revealing the calculating intelligence beneath. "I don't know what you mean, my dear boy. Your connection to the Force grants you glimpses of possible futures. I merely helped you understand their significance." "No." Anakin steps forward, his hand moving to his lightsaber hilt. "I can feel the dark side on them now. You've been poisoning my dreams, using my love for her against me. You've been trying to turn me into your apprentice." The revelation is like a dam bursting inside Anakin's mind. All the fear, all the desperation, all the agonizing choices he thought he faced, they had been manufactured. Palpatine had not been offering salvation. He had been creating the very problem he claimed to solve. "Clever boy." Palpatine's voice drops its pretense of warmth entirely, becoming cold and predatory. But it changes nothing. "The Jedi still plot to kill me, and they will come for you next. Your power frightens them, as it should. Together, we could bring order to the galaxy, end the chaos and suffering that has consumed so many worlds." But Anakin is already moving. His lightsaber springs to life with its familiar snap hiss, the blue blade casting dancing shadows on the walls as he takes his place beside Mace Windu. "I've made my choice. I stand with the Jedi. I stand with the light." The transformation in Palpatine is instantaneous and terrifying. The kindly Chancellor vanishes completely, replaced by the full, malevolent presence of Darth Sidious. His yellow eyes blaze with fury as his true nature is finally revealed in all its horrific glory. "So be it," the Sith Lord snarls, his voice echoing with dark power. "If you will not be my apprentice, then you will die with the rest of your pathetic order." Force lightning erupts from Palpatine's fingertips, a torrent of pure dark side energy that fills the air with the smell of ozone and the sound of crackling electricity. But now the two Jedi stand united, their lightsabers working in perfect harmony to deflect the deadly assault. Mace Windu's Varpad technique channels the dark side energy back toward its source, while Anakin's raw power amplifies their defensive barrier. The purple and blue blades dance together, creating a wall of light against the darkness that seeks to consume them. "You cannot defeat me!" Palpatine shrieks as his lightning is turned back upon him. "I am the Senate. I am the Republic. I have foreseen this moment, and I have prepared for every contingency." But even as he speaks, the Sith Lord is being forced backward by the relentless advance of the two Jedi. His own lightsaber materializes in his hand, its crimson blade igniting with a sound like tearing fabric. The weapon spins in complex patterns, as he attempts to defend against their coordinated assault. But fighting two masters of such caliber simultaneously tests even his considerable abilities. Mace presses forward with the controlled fury that characterizes his fighting style. Each strike precisely calculated to exploit weaknesses in Palpatine's defense. The older Jedi has spent decades perfecting his technique, learning to channel aggression and anger into a force for justice rather than destruction. Meanwhile, Anakin circles to the side, his unconventional approach catching the Sith Lord off guard. The young Jedi's style has always been unpredictable, incorporating elements from multiple forms and adapting constantly to changing circumstances. Against an opponent who relies on foresight and careful planning, such unpredictability becomes a significant advantage. The three lightsabers clash in a symphony of sparks and crackling energy. Palpatine's crimson blade weaves desperate patterns as he attempts to defend against attacks from multiple angles. But his movements are becoming increasingly frantic. Sweat beads on his forehead as the effort of maintaining his defense against two such skilled opponents takes its toll. Foolish Jedi, Palpatine gasps as he parries a particularly vicious strike from Mace. You think killing me will end this? The war will continue. The galaxy will tear itself apart without strong leadership. Chaos will consume everything you claim to protect. Your chaos, Anakin replies grimly, pressing his attack with renewed vigor. Your war, your manipulation, all of it ends here. The battle moves across the office, the three combatants leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Furniture is reduced to splinters, artwork centuries old is destroyed in seconds, and the very walls bear the scars of their conflict. But gradually, inevitably, the two Jedi begin to gain the upper hand. Palpatine attempts to break their coordination by targeting Anakin with a sudden burst of Force lightning. But the young Jedi is ready for it. He catches the energy on his blade and redirects it into the ceiling, causing chunks of debris to rain down around them. Desperate now, the Sith Lord resorts to more exotic techniques. He hurls furniture at his opponents with devastating force, turns lights into improvised projectiles, and even attempts to collapse parts of the ceiling to create barriers between the two Jedi. But nothing seems to work against their unified assault. Mace sees his opening first. As Palpatine overextends himself in a wild swing aimed at Anakin, the Jedi Master brings his purple blade around in a perfect arc. The crimson lightsaber is severed cleanly in half, its energy dissipating with a dying whine. Darth Sidious, the most powerful Sith Lord in 1,000 years, stands defenseless before two of the greatest Jedi warriors the galaxy has ever known. His yellow eyes dart between them, seeking some last desperate gambit, some final manipulation that might yet save him. But Anakin steps forward, his blue blade steady and unwavering. This is for every life lost in your war, for every Jedi you would have murdered, for every lie you told and every life you twisted to serve your ambitions. And this is for the galaxy you would have enslaved. Mace adds, his purple lightsaber humming with deadly purpose. The two blades come down in perfect synchronization, and the dark shadow that has hung over the galaxy for more than a decade is finally lifted. Darth Sidious falls, and with him dies the Sith Lord's grand design for galactic domination. The office falls silent, except for the distant hum of Coruscant traffic and the labored breathing of the two Jedi. Anakin deactivates his lightsaber with trembling hands, the magnitude of what they have just accomplished beginning to sink in. "Master Windu, what happens now?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Mace takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settling upon his shoulders. "Now we save the Republic. But first, we need to make sure that Order 66 doesn't get activated somehow." If Palpatine had contingency plans involving the clones, we need to act fast, even as they speak. The implications of Palpatine's death ripple outward across the galaxy at the speed of light. On the bridge of the Venator-class Star Destroyer Resolute, Captain Rex receives what should have been his final order. Instead of the familiar voice of Darth Sidious commanding him to execute Order 66, there is only silence. The inhibitor chip buried deep in his brain remains dormant, leaving him free to continue serving alongside the Jedi he has fought beside for 3 long years. On Utapau, Obi-Wan Kenobi stands over the smoking remains of General Grievous, unaware of how close he came to being gunned down by his own troops. Commander Cody, his finger hovering over the trigger of his blaster rifle, hesitates as no order comes. The chip in his head remains inactive, and the compulsion to kill his general never manifests. Across the galaxy, similar scenes play out on hundreds of worlds. Jedi who should have died continue their missions, unaware that they have just avoided extinction. The clone troopers who have served faithfully beside them remain loyal, their programming never activated. In the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Master Yoda suddenly sits up straighter in his meditation chamber. The ancient Jedi has felt a great disturbance in the Force. But this one is different from the usual ebb and flow of conflict. This feels like a turning point. A moment when the very fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance. Ended. Something has, he murmurs to himself, his eyes opening to reveal depths of wisdom accumulated over 9 centuries of life. But begun, something else has as well. The emergency session of the Jedi Council convenes within the hour. Masters from across the galaxy appear as holographic projections, their faces grim as they absorb the news of Palpatine's true identity and his death at the hands of Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker. "Failed, we have," Yoda says heavily, his usual inverted speech pattern reflecting the weight of his emotions. Blind to the darkness in our midst, the Council was a Sith Lord, controlling the Republic for over a decade, nearly destroyed. The Jedi Order almost was, but Master Yoda, Ki-Adi-Mundi, interjects, his holographic form flickering slightly due to the distance involved in the transmission. Surely this is a victory. The Sith threat has been eliminated, and the Republic can now be restored to its proper form. Victory, you call this? Yoda's ears droop with sorrow. Thousands of Jedi dead in this war. Millions of clones created to be slaves and potential executioners. Countless worlds devastated by conflicts orchestrated by our enemy. Learn from this catastrophe. We must, or doomed to repeat it, we will be. The discussion continues for hours as the Jedi grapple with the implications of their near extinction. How had they become so blind to the growing darkness? How had they allowed themselves to become generals in a war that was designed to destroy them? What changes must be made to ensure that such a deception could never succeed again? Meanwhile, in the Senate chambers, emergency sessions work to unravel the complex web of legislation and executive orders that Palpatine had used to accumulate power over the years. Senator Padme Amidala leads the charge, her voice ringing with passion as she addresses the assembled representatives. "We have been deceived," she declares, her words carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "For 13 years, we have unknowingly served a Sith Lord. Every vote we cast, every law we passed, every expansion of emergency powers we approved, all of it has served to strengthen the very evil we thought we were fighting against." The revelation sends shockwaves through the galactic political establishment. How many senators had been complicit in Palpatine's schemes? How many had genuinely believed they were serving the greater good? And how many had been willing participants in corruption? The process of determining guilt from innocence would take months, if not years, but already positive changes are beginning to manifest. The emergency powers that had been granted to the Chancellor's office are immediately revoked. The massive military buildup that had characterized the Clone Wars is halted, with resources being redirected toward reconstruction and humanitarian aid. Most importantly, steps are taken to ensure that no single individual could ever again accumulate the kind of unchecked authority that Palpatine had wielded. In the lower levels of Coruscant, word of the Chancellor's death spreads quickly through the underground networks that connect the planet's forgotten populations. For many of these beings, the news brings hope for the first time in years. Palpatine's policies had often favored the wealthy and powerful at the expense of the poor and marginalized. His death might finally allow for meaningful reform. But it is in the military that the most immediate changes are felt. Across the galaxy, clone commanders receive new orders to stand down and await further instructions. The massive clone army, created in secret and deployed without the knowledge of the Jedi or the Senate, suddenly finds itself without clear purpose or direction. On Kamino, the cloning facilities that have produced millions of identical soldiers begin to shut down. The Kaminoans, faced with the loss of their primary source of income, scramble to find new clients for their genetic engineering expertise. Some suggest that the existing clones should be terminated, having served their purpose, but this proposal is met with fierce resistance from both the Jedi and many senators who have come to respect the clones as individuals rather than expendable resources. The discovery of the inhibitor chips embedded in every clone's brain sends shockwaves through the Republic's leadership. The revelation that every single clone trooper has been a potential assassin, programmed to kill Jedi on command, forces a complete re-evaluation of military policy and clone rights. Rex stands at attention in the medical bay of a Republic cruiser, his helmet removed to reveal the surgical scar where the inhibitor chip had been extracted from his brain. The procedure had been delicate, requiring the skilled hands of medical droids and the careful guidance of Jedi healers. But it had been successful. "General Skywalker," he says as Anakin enters the medical bay, "I want you to know that I remember everything now, not just the missions we've been on together, but the moments when I felt different, like something was trying to control my thoughts. I'm grateful that Chip is gone, but I'm also terrified of what might have happened if Order 66 had been given." Anakin places a hand on the clone captain's shoulder, his expression grave. "You're free now, Rex. All of you are. The question is, what do you want to do with that freedom?" It's a question that millions of clones across the galaxy are grappling with as the chip removal process continues. Some choose to remain in military service, but now as volunteers rather than programmed soldiers. Others seek civilian careers, eager to explore lives beyond warfare. Still, others struggle with identity issues, having been created for a specific purpose that no longer exists. The Jedi Order, meanwhile, faces its own crisis of identity and purpose. For 3 years, they have served as generals in a galactic war, wielding armies and making strategic decisions that determined the fates of entire worlds. The transition back to their traditional role as peacekeepers and mediators proves more difficult than many had anticipated. Master Windu addresses the assembled Jedi Council, his voice heavy with the weight of recent revelations. We must face the truth that our order failed in its most fundamental duty. We allowed ourselves to be manipulated into becoming warriors instead of peacekeepers. We traded our robes for military uniforms and our meditation chambers for command bridges. But surely, Master Windu, Obi-Wan interjects, there were circumstances beyond our control. The galaxy was at war. People were suffering. How could we stand aside and do nothing? And that, Mace replies grimly, is exactly the kind of thinking that Palpatine exploited. He created a crisis that demanded action, then positioned himself as the only one capable of providing solutions. We became so focused on fighting the war that we lost sight of why we were fighting it in the first place. The debate continues for days as the Jedi struggle to define their role in the post-war galaxy. Some argue for a return to the ancient ways, withdrawing from galactic politics entirely and focusing on spiritual development. Others believe that the Order must evolve, learning from their mistakes, while continuing to serve as protectors of peace and justice. Anakin finds himself at the center of these discussions, his role in defeating Palpatine having elevated his status within the Order dramatically. The Council, recognizing both his crucial contribution and the wisdom he has shown in rejecting the dark side's temptations, grants him the rank of Master despite his youth. But more significant than any title or honor is the change in how the Jedi view attachment and emotion. Anakin's love for Padme, far from making him vulnerable to the dark side, had ultimately provided him with the clarity needed to see through Palpatine's deceptions. This revelation forces a fundamental re-evaluation of Jedi philosophy. Master Yoda, in his final address as Grand Master before stepping down, speaks to the assembled Order with the weight of 9 centuries behind his words. Wrong we have been about attachment and emotion. Fear them we did, because lead to the dark side they can, but deny them entirely we cannot, for part of life they are. Learn to understand them, to channel them toward the light. This is the new path we must walk. The changes are gradual but profound. The prohibition against marriage and family is relaxed, though not abandoned entirely. Jedi are encouraged to form connections with others, but they are also taught to understand the difference between love that liberates and possessiveness that enslaves. The distinction between healthy attachment and selfish obsession becomes a central focus of Jedi training. As months pass and the galaxy begins to heal from the wounds of war, Anakin and Padme's relationship becomes a symbol of this new understanding. Their marriage, once conducted in secret for fear of Jedi disapproval, is now acknowledged openly. When Padme gives birth to twins, Luke and Leia Skywalker enter a galaxy very different from the one that might have been. The birth itself is everything that Anakin's visions had not shown him. There are no complications, No brush with death. No desperate struggles to save mother or children. Padme delivers both babies safely, and their first cries echo through a medical facility filled with joy rather than tragedy. As Anakin holds his son and daughter for the first time, he marvels at how different reality is from the nightmares that had tormented him for so long. These children will grow up in a time of peace, surrounded by parents who love them and a galaxy committed to justice and democracy. "Luke," he whispers, cradling the boy, who gazes up at him with curious blue eyes. "And Leia," he adds, as his daughter makes her displeasure at being born known to everyone within hearing distance. "You're going to change the galaxy, both of you, but not through war or conflict. Through hope and love and the strength to choose what's right, even when it's difficult." The twins' force sensitivity is evident almost immediately, but their training follows a very different path than what might have been. Instead of being separated and hidden, they grow up together, learning to use their abilities under the careful guidance of both their father and the reformed Jedi Order. Years pass in this new golden age. The Republic, restructured with stronger democratic institutions and better safeguards against the accumulation of power, flourishes under leaders who genuinely serve the public good. The clone army is gradually phased out, replaced by volunteer forces drawn from across the galaxy. The former clone troopers, now full citizens with rights and freedoms, find their place in civilian society. The separatist movement, deprived of its secret Sith leadership, collapses almost overnight. Many of the worlds that had joined the CIS out of legitimate grievances against Republic corruption find their concerns addressed through peaceful negotiation and democratic reform. Trade routes reopen, economic prosperity returns, and a new generation grows up without the shadow of war hanging over them. But perhaps the most significant change is in the Jedi Order itself. No longer the rigid, dogmatic organization that had nearly fallen to Sith manipulation, the reformed Jedi embrace a more balanced understanding of the Force. They serve as mediators and peacekeepers, but they also participate in the broader galactic community as full citizens rather than aloof monks. Anakin, now recognized as one of the greatest Jedi of his generation, takes on a teaching role within the Order. His experiences with both light and dark sides of the Force, his understanding of the temptations that can lead good people astray, make him uniquely qualified to guide younger Jedi through their own struggles. The Chosen One's destiny has been fulfilled, but not in the way the ancient prophecies had been interpreted. Balance has come to the Force, not through the destruction of the Sith in violence, but through the triumph of wisdom over ignorance, love over fear, and hope over despair. One evening, as Coruscant's artificial sun sets behind the endless cityscape, Anakin stands on the balcony of his family's apartment, watching Luke and Leia play in the living room behind him. At 6 years old, the twins are already showing signs of their incredible potential, but they are also simply children, laughing and arguing and experiencing the joys of a normal childhood. Padme joins him on the balcony, her presence bringing the same sense of peace and completeness that it has since their first meeting on Naboo so many years ago. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you had made a different choice that day," she says softly, her hand finding his. Anakin is quiet for a long moment, remembering the weight of that decision, the moment when the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The dark side offered power, control, the ability to prevent loss and shape the galaxy according to his will. But it would have come at the cost of everything he truly valued. I think about it too," he admits finally. "And I'm grateful every day that I chose to trust in the light instead of giving in to fear. The galaxy is a better place because of that choice. But more importantly, our children will grow up in a world where love is seen as a strength rather than a weakness." Behind them, Luke's laughter mingles with Leia's as they chase each other around the furniture, their joy echoing through the apartment and out into the peaceful night. The Force flows around them all, no longer torn between light and dark, but unified in its purpose of binding all living things together in harmony. The future stretches out before them, bright with promise and possibility. There will be challenges ahead, new threats to face, and new choices to make. But the foundation is strong now, built on truth rather than deception, on love rather than fear, and on the understanding that the greatest power in the galaxy is not the ability to dominate others, but the wisdom to choose compassion over cruelty, hope over despair, and light over darkness. The story of Anakin Skywalker could have been a tragedy of fall and redemption, a tale of a hero's journey through darkness back to the light. Instead, it becomes something even more powerful, a story of choice, of the moment when a single decision changes the course of history and proves that even in the darkest times, the light of hope can never truly be extinguished. As the years continue to pass, the galaxy settles into an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity. The scars of the Clone Wars heal slowly but surely, as worlds ravaged by conflict are rebuilt, and communities torn apart by violence are reunited. The democratic institutions of the Republic, strengthened by the lessons learned during Palpatine's reign, prove resilient and adaptable to the changing needs of trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. The Jedi Order, too, continues to evolve and grow. No longer bound by the rigid traditions that had made them vulnerable to manipulation, they embrace a more flexible and compassionate approach to their role as guardians of peace. Young initiates are taught not just to suppress their emotions, but to understand and channel them constructively. The ancient prohibition against attachment gives way to a more nuanced understanding of the difference between love that frees and possessiveness that enslaves. Anakin's role in this transformation cannot be overstated. His experience with both the light and dark sides of the Force, his understanding of the temptations that can lead even the most well-intentioned individuals astray, makes him uniquely qualified to guide the Order into this new era. He becomes known not just as the Jedi who helped defeat the Sith, but as the teacher who helped the Order rediscover its true purpose. Luke and Leia Skywalker grow up in this transformed galaxy, their Force sensitivity nurtured and guided by parents who understand the importance of balance. Unlike the hidden, fearful existence they might have led in another timeline, the twins are able to develop their abilities openly, surrounded by love and support from both their family and the broader Jedi community. Luke, with his father's mechanical aptitude and his mother's diplomatic skills, shows early promise as both a pilot and a mediator. His natural empathy and intuitive understanding of others make him particularly suited to the Jedi role of peacekeeper and counselor. He dreams of exploring the galaxy, of discovering new worlds, and helping to bring the benefits of Republic civilization to isolated systems. Leia, inheriting her mother's political acumen and her father's determination, gravitates toward leadership and governance. Even as a child, she shows a remarkable ability to see through deception and manipulation. To understand the complex web of motivations that drive individuals and societies, her Force sensitivity manifests primarily through her ability to sense the truth behind words and to inspire others to work toward common goals. Both children receive training in lightsaber combat and Force techniques, but their education encompasses far more than martial skills. They learn history and diplomacy, science and philosophy, art and literature. They are raised to understand that their power comes with responsibility, not just to the Jedi Order or the Republic, but to all living beings throughout the galaxy. The threat of the Sith, which had loomed over the galaxy for a millennium, seems finally to have been lifted. With Palpatine's death and the revelation of his machinations, the ancient order of dark side users appears to be extinct at last. Archaeological expeditions to former Sith strongholds uncover libraries of forbidden knowledge, which are carefully studied and then secured to prevent their misuse. But even in this golden age, new challenges emerge to test the resolve and wisdom of the Republic and its Jedi Guardians. Exploration of the unknown regions reveals the existence of other Force-sensitive traditions, some benevolent and others decidedly hostile. First contact with the Chiss Ascendancy opens new possibilities for trade and cultural exchange, while encounters with the remnants of ancient Sith cults require careful handling to prevent the spread of dark-side corruption. Pirates and criminals, emboldened by the end of the massive military presence that had characterized the Clone Wars, attempt to establish new criminal empires in the vacuum left by the conflict's end. Corporate interests, no longer able to play Republic and Separatist forces against each other for profit, seek new ways to exploit vulnerable populations and circumvent democratic oversight. Environmental disasters, both natural and artificial, require coordinated response from Republic agencies and Jedi rescue teams. The ecological damage caused by 3 years of galactic warfare proves more extensive than initially realized, requiring decades of careful restoration work to undo. But perhaps the greatest challenge facing the post-war galaxy is the simple but profound task of learning to live in peace. Entire generations have known nothing but conflict, their lives shaped by the demands of war and the constant threat of violence. The transition to a peacetime economy and society requires fundamental changes in how beings think about their roles and purposes. For the clones, this transition proves particularly challenging. Created for war and trained from birth to follow orders without question, many struggle to adapt to civilian life. Support programs are established to help them develop individual identities and pursue personal goals. But the process is slow and often painful. Some clones choose to remain in military service, but now as volunteers rather than conscripts. They form the core of a new Republic Defense Force, smaller and more focused than the massive clone army, but better suited to the needs of a peacetime government. Their experience and dedication make them natural leaders and trainers for the volunteer recruits who join their ranks. Others pursue civilian careers, using the skills they developed during the war in new contexts. Clone pilots become commercial transporters. Clone medics join civilian hospitals, and clone engineers contribute to reconstruction efforts across the galaxy. Some even enter politics, their unique perspective on service and sacrifice making them powerful advocates for military veterans and marginalized populations. The Kaminoans, faced with the loss of their primary source of income, gradually shift their focus from military cloning to medical applications of their genetic expertise. They develop treatments for hereditary diseases, create organs for transplantation, and even work on life extension technologies. The ethical implications of their work require careful oversight, but the potential benefits to galactic health and longevity are enormous. Meanwhile, the political landscape of the Republic continues to evolve. The emergency powers that had been granted to the Chancellor's office during the war are formally revoked and replaced with more democratic oversight mechanisms. A new constitution is drafted, incorporating lessons learned from Palpatine's rise to power and establishing stronger safeguards against the concentration of authority in any single individual or office. Padme Amidala emerges as one of the leading voices in this constitutional convention. Her experience with both Republic politics and separatist grievances, making her uniquely qualified to bridge different perspectives. Her proposals for enhanced planetary autonomy, stronger protection of individual rights, and greater transparency in government operations become cornerstone principles of the reformed Republic. The economic implications of peace prove as complex as the political ones. The massive military-industrial complex that had grown up around the Clone Wars must be dismantled and converted to peaceful purposes. Weapons factories are retooled to produce agricultural equipment and medical supplies. Shipyards that once built Star Destroyers turn their attention to exploration vessels and cargo haulers. The transition is not without its difficulties. Unemployment rises as millions of workers in war-related industries lose their jobs. Some planets that had prospered as military suppliers find themselves struggling economically as demand for their products disappears. Careful planning and substantial investment in retraining and infrastructure development help ease these difficulties, but the process takes years to complete. Cultural changes prove equally significant. Art and literature, which had been dominated by themes of conflict and sacrifice during the war years, begin to explore new subjects. Musicians compose symphonies celebrating peace and reconciliation. Poets write verses about hope and renewal. Holodrama producers create entertainment that emphasizes cooperation and understanding rather than conflict and violence. Educational systems across the Republic undergo major reforms, with curricula updated to reflect the lessons learned from the war and the deceptions that had made it possible. Critical thinking and media literacy become standard subjects, designed to help citizens recognize and resist propaganda and manipulation. History classes examine not just the facts of past events, but the social and psychological factors that had made atrocities possible. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant, once nearly empty as its masters and knights deployed to battlefronts across the galaxy, fills again with the sounds of younglings learning and masters teaching. But the atmosphere is different now, less austere and more welcoming. The rigid hierarchies and formal protocols that had characterized the old order give way to more collaborative and inclusive approaches to training and governance. Anakin often walks through these halls, remembering his own difficult years as a Padawan struggling to fit into an order that seemed to have little place for his emotions and attachments. Now, young Jedi are taught that their feelings are not obstacles to overcome, but tools to understand and channel constructively. Master Skywalker, a young Twi'lek Padawan, approaches him one afternoon as he observes a lightsaber training session. "I'm having trouble with the meditation exercises. Every time I try to clear my mind, I keep thinking about my family back on Ryloth. Master Kenobi says I need to let go of my attachments, but I don't understand how I can stop caring about the people I love." Anakin kneels down to the young being's level, his expression gentle and understanding. "You don't need to stop caring about them," he says softly. Love is one of the greatest forces in the galaxy. The question is whether your love frees you to serve others or binds you to serve only yourself. He goes on to explain the difference between selfless love, which seeks the happiness and well-being of others even at personal cost, and possessive attachment, which seeks to control and keep others for one's own benefit. It's a nuanced distinction, one that the old order had struggled to teach effectively. But Anakin's own experience with both forms of feeling gives his words special weight. As the young Padawan nods with growing understanding, Anakin reflects on how different these conversations are from the stern lectures about emotional detachment that had characterized his own training. The new order doesn't ask its members to become emotionless automatons, but rather to become fully realized beings capable of feeling deeply while acting wisely. This philosophical evolution extends beyond the Jedi to influence the broader galactic culture. The recognition that emotion and attachment can be sources of strength rather than weakness leads to new approaches in fields ranging from diplomacy to education to psychotherapy. The sterile rationalism that had characterized much of Republic governance gives way to a more holistic understanding of sentient nature. But perhaps the most profound change is in how the galaxy views the Force itself. No longer seen as a mystical energy field accessible only to a small elite, the Force begins to be understood as something that connects all living beings. While not everyone can manipulate it as the Jedi do, everyone can learn to sense its presence and draw strength from their connection to the web of life it represents. This democratization of Force awareness leads to new forms of spiritual practice and community organization. Meditation circles spring up on planets across the Republic, bringing together beings of different species and backgrounds to explore their shared connection to the universe. Healers and counselors learn to incorporate Force-based techniques into their practice, even if they lack the sensitivity to become full Jedi. The changes are not without their critics and challenges. Some traditionalists, both within the Jedi Order and in the broader Republic, argue that the reforms go too far, that they represent a dangerous departure from proven principles. They worry that the relaxation of restrictions on attachment and emotion will lead to corruption and chaos, that the galaxy is simply setting itself up for another fall. Others argue that the reforms don't go far enough, that fundamental inequalities and injustices remain embedded in Republic society. They point to the continued exploitation of less developed worlds, the persistence of slavery in some systems, and the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a privileged few. These debates are healthy and necessary, reflecting the vibrancy of a truly democratic society. The key difference from the pre-war period is that they take place in an atmosphere of openness and transparency rather than manipulation and deception. Citizens have access to accurate information. Leaders are held accountable for their actions, and dissent is seen as a necessary component of good governance rather than a threat to be suppressed. As Luke and Leia Skywalker approach their teenage years, they begin to take on more active roles in both Jedi training and Republic service. Luke's natural piloting ability makes him a valuable member of exploration missions to uncharted regions of the galaxy. His compassionate nature and diplomatic skills help establish positive relationships with newly contacted civilizations. On one such mission to the Outer Rim, 16-year-old Luke finds himself serving as both pilot and junior diplomat aboard the exploration vessel New Hope. The ship has been dispatched to investigate strange energy readings from an uncharted system, readings that suggest the presence of Force-sensitive beings or artifacts. Captain Antilles, the mission commander, briefs the exploration team as they drop out of hyperspace near a verdant world orbited by 3 small moons. Sensors indicate a pre-industrial civilization, he reports, but there are definite signs of force manipulation in the planet's energy patterns. The ecosystem shows signs of conscious guidance. And there are structures that shouldn't be possible with their apparent technology level. Luke extends his senses through the Force, feeling the life energy that flows through the planet below. There's something different about this place, he tells the assembled team. The Force feels older here, more primal, like it's been channeled for thousands of years, but in ways I've never encountered before. The landing party consists of Luke, 2 Jedi Knights, a xenobiologist, a cultural attaché, and a small security detail. As their shuttle descends through the planet's atmosphere, they're greeted by a sight that takes their breath away. Vast cities seem to grow directly from the living trees, their organic architecture flowing seamlessly with the natural environment. Waterfalls cascade through inhabited spaces, and bridges of woven vines span impossible distances. The inhabitants themselves are equally remarkable, tall and graceful, with bark-like skin and eyes that shift color with their emotions. They move with a fluid coordination that speaks of deep communion with their environment. When they speak, it's not just with words but with harmonics that seem to resonate through the very air itself. "Welcome, young one." Their leader greets Luke, her voice like wind through leaves. "We have felt your approach through the song of the forest. You carry the light of distant stars, but also the echo of ancient sorrows. Come, let us share the wisdom of the growing world." The days that follow are a revelation for Luke. These beings, who call themselves the Izana, have developed a completely different relationship with the Force than anything he has learned from the Jedi. Where the Jedi seek to impose order and structure, the Asana flow with natural rhythms. Where the Jedi train through discipline and meditation, the Asana learn through symbiosis with their living environment. You think of the Force as something to be controlled. The Asana leader explains, as she guides Luke through a garden where the very flowers respond to her emotions. But control implies separation. We do not control the Force any more than a river controls the water that flows through it. We are part of the current, and it is part of us. Luke spends weeks among the Asana, learning techniques that expand his understanding of what the Force can be. He learns to communicate with living ecosystems, to sense the health of entire planetary biospheres, to encourage growth and healing on a scale that would be impossible through conventional Jedi methods. But perhaps most importantly, he learns about balance in a way that transcends the simple light versus dark dichotomy that has dominated galactic understanding of the Force. The Asana show him that the Force encompasses all aspects of existence: creation and destruction, growth and decay, joy and sorrow, and that true wisdom lies not in choosing one side over another, but in understanding how they all fit together in the greater pattern. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant, Leia's political instincts and leadership abilities draw her toward governance and policy-making. She serves internships with various Republic agencies, learning how complex bureaucracies function and how to navigate the competing interests that shape galactic policy. Her Force sensitivity gives her unique insights into the motivations and fears that drive political behavior. At 17, Leia finds herself serving as a junior aide to Senator Mon Mothma during a particularly complex trade dispute between the core worlds and the mid-rim territories. The issue appears straightforward on the surface: shipping rates and tariff structures. But Leia's sensitivity to the underlying currents of emotion and motivation reveals a much deeper problem. Senator Mothma, she says during a private briefing, "I don't think this is really about trade at all. When I listen to the delegates from both sides, I sense fear. The core world representatives are afraid of losing their economic dominance, and the mid-rim delegates are afraid of being permanently relegated to second-class status." Mon Mothma, who has become something of a mentor to the young Skywalker, nods thoughtfully. "Your father had similar insights during his time as a diplomat. The ability to sense what people are really thinking and feeling, rather than just what they're saying, is invaluable in negotiations. What do you think we should focus on?" Leia spends the next several days conducting private meetings with delegates from both sides, using her Force sensitivity to build trust and understanding. She doesn't manipulate their thoughts. Such techniques are forbidden by Jedi ethics. But she does create an atmosphere of openness and honesty that allows the real issues to surface. The breakthrough comes when she realizes that both sides are operating from the same fundamental fear: that the galaxy's increasing prosperity is fragile and could be lost at any moment. The core worlds remember the devastation of the Clone Wars and fear that any disruption to their economic stability could lead to chaos. The mid-rim territories remember being ignored and exploited in the past and fear that they'll be abandoned again if times get tough. What if, Leia suggests during a joint session, we focused on building resilience rather than protecting advantages? Instead of fighting over the current distribution of resources, what if we worked together to expand opportunities for everyone? The solution she proposes involves a comprehensive development program that would help mid-rim worlds build their own industrial capacity while providing new markets for core world goods and services. It's a complex arrangement that requires careful coordination and significant investment, but it addresses the underlying fears of both sides while creating new opportunities for cooperation. The negotiations take months to complete, but when they're finally concluded, the agreement becomes a model for similar disputes across the Republic. More importantly for Leia, the experience teaches her valuable lessons about the power of empathy and understanding in political leadership. Both twins' experiences during these formative years are shaped by their unique position as the children of the man who saved the galaxy from Sith domination. They carry not just the burden of living up to their father's legacy, but also the responsibility of helping to shape the kind of galaxy they want to live in. Their training at the Jedi Temple continues alongside their external activities, but it follows a very different pattern than what had been traditional for the Order. Instead of being cloistered away from the outside world, they're encouraged to engage with it directly. Instead of being taught to suppress their emotions, they learn to understand and channel them constructively. Master Yoda, now in his final years, takes special interest in their development. "Ancient am I," he tells them, during one of their regular sessions, "and much have I seen. Mistakes the old Order made, but learn from them we must. Teach you I will, but learn from you I hope to as well." The aging Jedi Master's teaching style has evolved considerably since the dark days when the Order nearly fell to Sith manipulation. Where once he had emphasized detachment and emotional control, now he focuses on integration and understanding. He tells them stories of the old days, but always with an emphasis on the lessons learned rather than the traditions to be preserved. Fear, the path to the dark side it is, he explains during one memorable lesson. But fear, a part of life, it also island. Deny it, we cannot. Understand it, we must. Channel it toward protection of others, we can. Transform it into courage, possible. It, island. This more nuanced understanding of emotion and motivation becomes central to the twins' development as both Jedi and galactic citizens. They learn that their power comes not from their ability to detach themselves from the world around them, but from their capacity to engage with it fully while maintaining their moral compass. As they grow older, both Luke and Leia begin to demonstrate capabilities that exceed even their famous father's abilities. But more importantly, they show a wisdom and emotional maturity that reflects the lessons learned from the galaxy's near collapse under Sith influence. Luke's explorations of the Outer Rim and unknown regions bring him into contact with dozens of different Force traditions, each offering unique perspectives on the nature of reality and consciousness. He encounters warrior monks who use the Force to enhance their combat abilities far beyond anything the Jedi had achieved, but who are completely peaceful in their daily lives. He meets healers who can repair genetic damage at the cellular level, but who refuse to use their abilities for personal gain or political advantage. On the industrial world of Corellia, he discovers a group of Force-sensitive mechanics who have developed techniques for communing directly with machines and artificial intelligences. They can repair complex systems by intuiting the patterns of energy flow within them. And they've created spacecraft that respond to their pilots' intentions as naturally as living beings. These are not corrupted practitioners of dark side techniques, Luke realizes as he trains with them. They're simply beings who have discovered different ways of interacting with the Force. The old Jedi Order would have dismissed most of these practices as unorthodox or dangerous, but I can see how they're all expressions of the same underlying truth. His reports back to the reformed Jedi Council help shape a new understanding of what it means to be a Force user in the galaxy. Instead of trying to impose a single rigid doctrine, the Order begins to explore how different approaches can complement and strengthen each other. Leia's political career takes a different but equally important path. Her experiences as a junior diplomat and policy analyst lead to her election to the Senate from Naboo at the unprecedented age of 19. Her youth and Force sensitivity make her a unique voice in galactic politics, able to bridge generational and cultural divides that have historically frustrated diplomatic efforts. Her first major legislative initiative focuses on establishing educational exchanges between different worlds and species. The program she proposes would allow young beings from across the Republic to spend time living and learning in completely different environments, breaking down the prejudices and misunderstandings that had made manipulation by Sith forces possible. The proposal faces significant resistance from traditionalists who worry about cultural contamination and security risks. Some senators argue that such exchanges would weaken planetary identities and create confusion among the young. Others worry that allowing too much interaction between different groups will lead to conflict and instability. But Leia's passionate advocacy for the program, combined with her ability to sense and address the real concerns behind the opposition, gradually builds support for the initiative. She speaks eloquently about her own experiences learning from different Force traditions and cultures, and how those experiences have strengthened rather than weakened her commitment to Republic values. Understanding breeds tolerance, she argues before the full Senate. Fear of the other breeds hatred and conflict. If we want to ensure that another Palpatine never again manipulates our differences against us, we must learn to see those differences as sources of strength rather than division. The educational exchange program eventually passes with overwhelming support. And within its first few years, it transforms the cultural landscape of the Republic. Young beings who have lived among different species and traditions return home with expanded perspectives and enhanced empathy. The next generation of leaders emerges with a much more sophisticated understanding of the galaxy's diversity and complexity. Both Luke and Leia's accomplishments during these years are made possible by the stable foundation their parents' generation has built. The Republic that emerges from the Clone Wars is stronger and more resilient than its predecessor, with institutions designed to prevent the concentration of power that had made Palpatine's rise possible. The reformed Jedi Order, meanwhile, serves as a model for how ancient traditions can evolve and adapt without losing their essential character. The new generation of Jedi are more integrated into galactic society, while maintaining their commitment to justice and peace. They serve as teachers and healers, diplomats and explorers, always working to expand understanding and reduce suffering. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy has learned to value diversity and dialogue over uniformity and dogma. The recognition that there are many valid approaches to understanding the Force and living a meaningful life has led to a flowering of creativity and innovation in fields ranging from art to science to philosophy. The transformation is not without its challenges and setbacks. Economic inequality persists in many systems, despite efforts to address it through more equitable policies. Some species and cultures remain suspicious of outside influence, preferring isolation to integration. Criminal organizations continue to exploit gaps in law enforcement and regulatory oversight. New threats also emerge from beyond the Republic's borders. In the unknown regions, ancient civilizations awaken from millennia of slumber, some bringing wisdom and others bringing conflict. First contact protocols developed during the peaceful exploration missions often prove inadequate when dealing with species that have radically different values and communication methods. On the remote world of Zakuul, archaeological expeditions uncover evidence of a vast stellar empire that once rivaled the Republic itself. The ruins speak of technologies that manipulate the Force on a planetary scale, and of philosophical traditions that blur the lines between organic and artificial consciousness. Some of the artifacts recovered from these sites exhibit properties that challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Luke leads one of the research teams investigating these discoveries, working alongside xenoarchaeologists and Force philosophers to understand their implications. The Zakuulans, they determine, had developed techniques for storing consciousness in crystalline matrices, effectively achieving a form of technological immortality. But their civilization had ultimately collapsed when they lost the ability to distinguish between authentic experience and artificial simulation. This is why balance is so important, Luke reflects as he studies the elegant but empty Zakuulan monuments. They became so focused on perfecting their existence that they forgot what it meant to be alive. Power without wisdom, technology without soul, order without growth. It all leads to the same dead end. The discoveries on Zakuul and other ancient worlds serve as reminders that the galaxy has faced existential threats before, and that survival requires not just strength, but adaptability. The lessons learned from Palpatine's deception, the importance of transparency, the danger of concentrated power, the value of diverse perspectives prove applicable to challenges that the Republic's founders never could have imagined. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, the political landscape continues to evolve in response to these new realities. The Senate establishes permanent committees on xenoarchaeology and first contact protocols, recognizing that the galaxy's expansion into previously unexplored regions will inevitably bring new challenges and opportunities. Leia serves on several of these committees. Her unique combination of political skill and force sensitivity, making her an invaluable mediator between different factions and perspectives. Her work helps establish ethical guidelines for archaeological research, ensuring that ancient sites are studied respectfully and that any discoveries are shared openly rather than hoarded by individual governments or organizations. She also plays a key role in developing the Republic's approach to newly contacted civilizations. The protocols she helps design emphasize patient observation and gradual introduction, avoiding the cultural contamination and exploitation that had characterized some first contact situations in the past. Every civilization we encounter has something to teach us, she argues. Before the Senate's Committee on External Relations, our goal should not be to impose our values and systems on others, but to learn from each other and find ways to coexist peacefully. The galaxy is vast enough for many different approaches to life and governance. This philosophy of respectful engagement becomes a cornerstone of Republic foreign policy, helping to avoid the conflicts and misunderstandings that might otherwise arise from cultural differences. It also reflects the deeper transformation in galactic consciousness that has occurred since the end of the Clone Wars. The generation that lived through Palpatine's deception and the near destruction of the Jedi Order understands viscerally how dangerous it can be to assume that one's own perspective is the only valid one. They have learned to question authority, to seek multiple sources of information, and to remain open to new ideas and approaches. This cultural shift is reflected in changes throughout Republic society. Educational systems emphasize critical thinking and media literacy. News organizations adopt stricter standards for verifying information and identifying sources. Political campaigns are required to disclose their funding sources and strategic advisors. Most importantly, a new generation of leaders emerges who are committed to transparency and accountability. These are beings who grew up hearing stories of how close the galaxy came to tyranny, and who are determined to ensure that such deception never succeeds again. Anakin Skywalker, now recognized as one of the greatest Jedi Masters in the Order's history, often reflects on the path that brought the galaxy to this point. His choice to trust in the light rather than give in to fear had consequences that continue to ripple outward decades later. The nightmares that once tormented him, visions of Padmé's death, of the galaxy consumed by darkness, of his own fall to the Sith, have been replaced by dreams of possibility and hope. He sees Luke and Leia growing into their roles as leaders and teachers, using their abilities to build bridges rather than walls. He sees the Republic evolving into something stronger and more inclusive than it had ever been before. He sees the Force flowing freely through a galaxy, finally learning to embrace its diversity rather than fear it. But perhaps most importantly, he sees the simple joys of family life that he might never have experienced if he had chosen differently. Luke's excitement as he describes his latest discovery, Leia's passionate arguments about galactic policy over dinner, Padmé's quiet satisfaction, as she watches their children grow into the remarkable beings they're becoming. These are the rewards of choosing love over fear, trust over suspicion, hope over despair. They are personal and intimate, but they also represent something universal. The recognition that the most profound power in the galaxy is not the ability to dominate others, but the capacity to nurture and protect what we hold dear. As the years pass and the twins approach adulthood, they begin to face choices of their own about what paths they want to follow. Luke is drawn increasingly toward exploration and discovery, wanting to push the boundaries of understanding about the Force and the galaxy's many mysteries. Leia feels called to leadership and service, seeking to build on the foundation of peace and justice that their parents' generation has established. Both paths are necessary, and both reflect the values that have guided the galaxy's transformation since the end of the Clone Wars. The future stretches out before them, bright with promise but also filled with challenges that will test their wisdom and resolve. New threats will emerge, as they always do. Political tensions will arise as different groups compete for resources and influence. The temptation to take shortcuts or accumulate power will present itself to future leaders, just as it had to Palpatine and countless others before him. But the galaxy is better prepared now to face these challenges. The institutions are stronger, the people are more informed, and the values of diversity and dialogue have taken deep root. Most importantly, the example of those who chose wisely in the past serves as a guide for those who must choose in the future. The story of Anakin Skywalker's choice and the galactic transformation that followed becomes part of the Republic's founding mythology. Children learn about it in school, politicians reference it in speeches, and Jedi Masters use it to illustrate the importance of trusting in the light, even when the darkness seems overwhelming. But it is not presented as a simple tale of good triumphing over evil. Instead, it is taught as a complex exploration of choice and consequence, of the factors that lead individuals toward wisdom or corruption, and of the importance of remaining vigilant against the forces that would divide and manipulate free peoples. The Force itself seems to respond to this new understanding, flowing more freely and powerfully than it has in generations. Force-sensitive beings across the galaxy report enhanced abilities and deeper connections to the web of life that binds all things together. Some scholars theorize that the Force actually grows stronger when it is understood and used wisely, rather than feared or hoarded. This growing strength manifests in many ways. Healers are able to cure diseases that were once thought incurable. Explorers can navigate hyperspace routes that were previously considered impossible. Agricultural specialists can encourage plant growth in environments that were once barren and lifeless. But perhaps most significantly, the number of Force-sensitive beings born in each generation begins to increase. This is not the result of any genetic engineering or artificial intervention, but appears to be a natural response to the galaxy's growing harmony and understanding. These new Force users are different from their predecessors in important ways. They are more integrated into normal society, less likely to be isolated or alienated by their abilities. They also demonstrate a more intuitive understanding of balance and moderation, seeming to naturally avoid the extremes that had characterized some Force traditions in the past. The Jedi Order adapts to accommodate these changes, developing new training programs and support systems for the growing population of Force users. But they also recognize that not every Force-sensitive being needs to become a Jedi. Many choose to use their abilities in other professions, as healers, teachers, artists, engineers, or in countless other roles where their enhanced perception and empathy can benefit society. This democratization of Force awareness represents perhaps the most profound transformation of all. The ancient idea that only a select few could truly understand and use the Force gives way to a recognition that all beings have the potential to connect with the energy that flows through all life. Luke and Leia, as they come of age in this transformed galaxy, embody this new understanding. They are powerful Force users, but they are also ordinary citizens committed to service and growth. They represent the possibility that Force sensitivity can be a gift that enhances one's ability to contribute to society, rather than something that sets one apart from it. As they prepare to take on adult responsibilities, both twins understand that they are inheriting not just their parents' legacy, but the collective efforts of an entire generation that chose to build rather than destroy, to unite rather than divide, to hope rather than despair. The galaxy stretches out before them, vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered, challenges yet to be met, and choices yet to be made. But they face the future with confidence, knowing that the foundation beneath them is strong and that the values they carry will guide them through whatever trials may come. This is the true legacy of Anakin Skywalker's choice, not just the immediate salvation of the Republic and the Jedi Order, but the creation of a galactic civilization based on wisdom, compassion, and the recognition that the greatest strength comes from unity rather than domination. The dark side will always exist as a possibility, as a temptation that must be recognized and resisted. But the light has proven stronger, and the galaxy has learned to nurture and protect that light, so that future generations can continue to benefit from its warmth and guidance. Years turn to decades, and the golden age that began with Palpatine's defeat deepens and expands. The Republic that emerges from this transformation is barely recognizable compared to the corrupt and vulnerable institution that had nearly fallen to Sith manipulation. It has evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly democratic confederation that balances individual freedom with collective responsibility, local autonomy with coordinated action. The economic prosperity that characterizes this era is built on principles very different from the exploitative capitalism that had dominated the pre-war period. The new economic model emphasizes sustainability, equity, and long-term thinking over short-term profit maximization. Corporations are required to consider the environmental and social impacts of their activities, and worker ownership and cooperative enterprises flourish throughout the galaxy. On the industrial world of Fondor, former weapons factories have been converted into facilities that produce advanced medical equipment and environmental restoration technology. The workers who once built Star Destroyers now create hospital ships that provide free healthcare to underserved regions. The engineers who designed fighter craft now develop atmospheric processors that can restore damaged ecosystems. This economic transformation is supported by technological advances that seem almost miraculous to earlier generations. The integration of Force-enhanced engineering with conventional science leads to breakthroughs in energy production, space travel, and biological healing that revolutionize daily life across the galaxy. On Corellia, A team of force-sensitive engineers develops hyperspace engines that can travel vast distances with unprecedented efficiency and safety. These new drives don't just move ships faster through hyperspace. They somehow harmonize with the natural flow of cosmic energy, reducing the stress and disorientation that had previously made long-distance travel so challenging. Master Skywalker. One of the young engineers explains to Luke during his visit to their facility, "We discovered that hyperspace isn't just empty void between real space locations. It's actually filled with currents and flows of force energy that we can learn to work with rather than fight against. When we align our technology with these natural patterns, everything becomes more efficient and harmonious." Luke watches in amazement as ships entering hyperspace seem to slip away with an almost organic grace, like fish diving into the depths of an ocean. The harsh, mechanical violence of traditional hyperspace jumps is replaced by something that feels natural and alive. These technological advances are matched by equally profound developments in social organization and governance. The Senate undergoes regular structural reforms, with power rotating between different regions and species to prevent the concentration of authority that had made Palpatine's rise possible. Decision-making processes emphasize consensus building and collaborative problem-solving over competitive debates and zero-sum thinking. The judicial system is reformed to emphasize restorative rather than punitive justice. Courts focus on healing relationships and addressing the root causes of conflict rather than simply punishing wrongdoing. Criminals are offered opportunities for rehabilitation and community service, and victims are given voice in determining appropriate responses to harm. These changes are reflected in dramatic reductions in crime rates across the Republic, when people feel heard and valued by their communities, when they have meaningful opportunities for education and employment, when they see justice as healing rather than revenge. The motivations for antisocial behavior diminish significantly. On the former smuggling haven of Nar Shaddaa, crime bosses who once controlled vast criminal empires find their influence waning as legitimate opportunities proliferate. Young beings who might once have turned to smuggling or theft instead pursue careers in interstellar commerce, exploration, or creative arts. The Hutt cartels, deprived of their traditional sources of income and recruitment, gradually transform into legitimate business enterprises or fade into irrelevance. The transformation extends beyond economic and political structures to encompass fundamental changes in how beings relate to each other and to the galaxy itself. The recognition that all life is connected through the Force leads to new approaches to education, healthcare, and personal development that emphasize holistic well-being over narrow specialization. Schools across the Republic incorporate meditation and mindfulness training into their standard curricula, teaching children to develop emotional intelligence and empathetic awareness alongside traditional academic subjects. Students learn to sense and respect the feelings of others, to resolve conflicts through communication rather than aggression, and to see their own well-being as inseparably connected to the well-being of their communities. Healthcare systems evolve to treat not just physical symptoms, but the whole person, recognizing that emotional, social, and spiritual health are all interconnected. Force-sensitive healers work alongside conventional medical professionals, providing treatments that address the energetic imbalances that often underlie physical illness. On the medical research station orbiting Alderaan, Dr. Kira Thorne leads a team developing new therapeutic techniques that combine advanced biotechnology with force-based healing methods. Their work has produced treatments for conditions that were once considered incurable. from genetic disorders to traumatic brain injuries to certain forms of mental illness. The key insight, Dr. Thorne explains to Leia during a tour of the facility, is that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about restoring balance and harmony to the whole system. When we work with the Force instead of against it, we can help the body's own healing mechanisms achieve things that conventional medicine alone could never accomplish. These medical advances have profound implications for galactic society. Life expectancy increases dramatically across all species, not just due to better treatments, but because of improved understanding of how to maintain health and prevent disease. Mental health care becomes as routine and accessible as treatment for physical injuries, reducing the suffering that had driven so many beings toward desperation and violence. The arts flourish during this golden age as beings who are no longer consumed by survival needs turn their attention to creative expression and cultural exploration. Music, literature, visual arts, and performance traditions from across the galaxy cross-pollinate and evolve in extraordinary ways. On Naboo, the Royal Conservatory of Arts becomes a center for experimental collaboration between artists from dozens of different species. Human musicians work with Ithorian sound shapers to create symphonies that incorporate frequencies and harmonics impossible for any single species to produce. Twi'lek dancers collaborate with Rhodian sculptors to create kinetic artworks that transform and evolve in response to audience emotions. Luke and Leia often attend these performances during their visits home, marveling at how art has become a universal language that transcends species barriers and cultural differences. The creativity unleashed by peace and prosperity seems limitless, producing works of beauty and meaning that inspire and uplift beings across the galaxy. But perhaps the most significant transformation is in how the galaxy approaches the mysteries of existence itself. The near destruction of the Jedi Order and the revelation of how thoroughly the Sith had manipulated galactic affairs leads to a fundamental reconsideration of what it means to seek truth and wisdom. Traditional religions and philosophical schools that had been marginalized during the Republic's focus on rationalism and technology experience a renaissance. But rather than returning to dogmatic orthodoxy, these traditions evolve to incorporate the lessons learned from the Clone Wars and the insights gained from contact with diverse Force traditions. The ancient Jedi Temple on Coruscant is expanded to include meditation spaces and study halls for practitioners of many different spiritual traditions. Followers of the cosmic balance philosophy from the Outer Rim work alongside traditional Jedi, while scholars of the Living Force tradition share research with academics studying the quantum mechanics of consciousness. These diverse approaches to understanding existence don't compete with each other, but rather contribute to a richer and more complete picture of reality. The recognition that there are many valid paths to wisdom becomes a cornerstone of the new galactic culture. Master Yoda, in his final years before becoming one with the Force, often speaks about this transformation with deep satisfaction. Learned much, the galaxy has, he tells Luke and Leia during one of their last conversations with him. Not just about the Force, but about the danger of thinking any one group has all the answers. Humility, the beginning of wisdom. It Island, his passing marks the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new phase in the galaxy's spiritual evolution. The funeral ceremony held for him draws beings from across known space, representing dozens of different traditions and approaches to understanding the Force. The event becomes a celebration not just of his individual life, but of the wisdom that can emerge when different perspectives are honored and integrated. Luke, now a full Jedi Knight and respected explorer, delivers one of the eulogies. Master Yoda taught us that the greatest teachers are often the greatest students, he says to the assembled crowd. He showed us that admitting our mistakes and learning from them is not weakness, but strength. His legacy lives on not in the specific techniques he taught, but in the spirit of openness and growth he embodied. The ceremony includes elements from many different traditions: Jedi meditation practices, Isana nature rituals, Corellian technological blessings, and musical tributes from species across the galaxy. Rather than feeling fragmented or chaotic, the diverse elements blend together into something beautiful and unified, reflecting the harmony that has emerged from the galaxy's diversity. As the years pass and Luke and Leia take on greater responsibilities, they continue to embody the principles that their father's choice made possible. Luke's explorations push the boundaries of known space and understanding, while Leia's political leadership helps navigate the challenges of governing an increasingly complex and interconnected galaxy. The threats they face are different from those that confronted earlier generations. Rather than the existential danger of Sith domination or galactic war, they deal with the subtler but equally important challenges of maintaining prosperity without complacency, preserving diversity without fragmentation, and continuing to grow without losing the wisdom hard-won through past struggles. On his 30th birthday, Luke stands on the observation deck of his exploration vessel, gazing out at a newly discovered nebula that seems to pulse with its own internal light. His team has determined that the nebula is actually a massive living organism, a space-dwelling entity that has existed for millions of years, slowly growing and evolving in the vacuum between stars. The discovery challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of life and consciousness, opening up new questions about the relationship between the Force and biological existence. But Luke feels no anxiety about these uncertainties. Instead, he experiences the excitement of exploration and discovery that drives him to push ever further into the unknown. This is what we fought for, he thinks, remembering the stories his father told him about the dark days when the galaxy teetered on the edge of tyranny. Not just peace, but the freedom to grow and learn and explore. The freedom to be amazed by the universe rather than afraid of it. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Leia addresses the Senate on the question of establishing formal diplomatic relations with the nebula entity. The discovery has raised complex questions about the rights of non-humanoid intelligences and the protocols for interacting with beings whose existence spans geological timescales. Some senators argue that the entity is too alien to comprehend or communicate with meaningfully. Others worry that contact might disrupt its natural life cycle or expose it to harm from less scrupulous parties. Still others see it as an unprecedented opportunity to expand understanding of consciousness and intelligence in the universe. Leia's speech draws on decades of experience with first contact situations and her deep understanding of the Force's role in connecting all living things. "We stand at a threshold," she tells the assembled representatives. "We can choose to approach this discovery with fear and caution, seeing it as a threat to our understanding of the universe, or we can choose to approach it with wonder and respect, seeing it as an opportunity to grow and learn." The debate that follows reflects the sophisticated level of discourse that has become characteristic of Republic governance. Senators draw on expertise from fields ranging from xenobiology to philosophy to quantum physics, seeking to understand not just the practical implications of contact, but the ethical and spiritual dimensions as well. The final decision reached through careful deliberation and extensive consultation with experts and affected communities, establishes protocols for gradual, respectful contact with the nebula entity. The approach emphasizes patience, humility, and mutual benefit, rather than hasty exploitation or domination. These kinds of thoughtful, collaborative decision-making processes have become the norm throughout the Republic, reflecting the hard-learned lessons about the dangers of hasty action and concentrated authority. Every major decision is subjected to rigorous analysis, broad consultation, and careful consideration of long-term consequences. But this deliberative approach doesn't lead to paralysis or indecision. Instead, it produces policies and actions that are more robust and sustainable, because they take into account multiple perspectives and potential outcomes. The galaxy has learned to act wisely rather than quickly, and the results speak for themselves in the form of unprecedented prosperity, peace, and progress. As Luke and Leia approach middle age, they begin to see the fruits of their life's work in the emergence of a new generation of leaders who take the transformed galaxy for granted. These young beings have never known a time when different species couldn't work together, when political decisions were made in secret, or when might made right. To them, the idea that the galaxy was once ruled by a Sith Lord seems as remote and fantastical as ancient mythology. They grow up expecting transparency from their leaders, assuming that conflicts will be resolved through dialogue rather than violence, and taking for granted that their voices will be heard in decisions that affect their lives. This generational shift brings both opportunities and challenges. The young leaders bring fresh perspectives and innovative ideas, but they sometimes lack appreciation for how fragile the current peace and prosperity really are. They have never experienced the fear and desperation that can drive beings to make terrible choices, and they sometimes underestimate the vigilance required to maintain a free and just society. Luke and Leia find themselves in the unusual position of serving as elder statesmen while still in the prime of their lives, helping to bridge the gap between those who remember the dark times and those who have known only light. They work to ensure that the lessons of the past are not forgotten, while also encouraging the innovations and reforms that each new generation brings. One of their most important contributions is the establishment of the Galactic Institute for Historical Memory, a research and educational organization dedicated to preserving and sharing the lessons learned from the galaxy's struggles with tyranny and manipulation. The Institute maintains archives of documents, testimonies, and artifacts from the Clone Wars and Palpatine's rule. But more importantly, it develops educational programs that help citizens understand how democratic institutions can be protected and strengthened. The Institute's work proves especially valuable as the galaxy faces new challenges that test the resilience of its democratic institutions. Economic disruptions caused by contact with the nebula entity and other discoveries create tensions between different regions and interest groups. Environmental changes on some worlds require difficult decisions about resource allocation and population relocation. But rather than tearing the Republic apart, these challenges serve to strengthen its democratic culture. Citizens who have been educated about the importance of civic participation and the dangers of authoritarian solutions work together to find creative, collaborative responses to emerging problems. On the agricultural world of Dantooine, a severe drought threatens the livelihoods of millions of farmers and the food security of several star systems. Rather than allowing the crisis to become a source of conflict and recrimination, the affected communities work with Republic agencies and Jedi mediators to develop comprehensive adaptation strategies. The solution involves not just emergency relief and technological assistance, but also long-term changes in farming practices, water management systems, and economic structures. Farmers learn new techniques for conserving water and growing drought-resistant crops. Communities develop cooperative arrangements for sharing resources and supporting struggling members. The Republic invests in infrastructure improvements and alternative economic opportunities. Most importantly, the response to the crisis becomes a model for how democratic societies can address complex challenges through collaboration rather than competition. Instead of each community trying to protect its own interests at the expense of others, they work together to find solutions that benefit everyone. This kind of cooperative problem-solving becomes characteristic of how the mature Republic addresses challenges. Whether dealing with natural disasters, economic disruptions, or conflicts between different groups, the default response is to bring stakeholders together to find mutually beneficial solutions, rather than imposing solutions from above or allowing the strongest to dominate the weakest. The success of this approach creates a positive feedback loop that strengthens democratic culture and institutions over time. As citizens see that their participation in democratic processes produces real benefits for their communities, they become more engaged and invested in maintaining and improving those processes. As Luke and Leia enter their 40s and begin to think about their legacies, they can look back on lives that have helped transform not just the Republic, but the galaxy's entire approach to governance, conflict resolution, and social organization. The choices their father made in Palpatine's office 4 decades earlier continue to ripple outward, creating possibilities and opportunities that would have been unimaginable in the dark days of Sith manipulation. The galaxy they are preparing to pass on to the next generation is not perfect. No society ever is, but it is fundamentally healthy and resilient. It has institutions that can adapt to changing circumstances, cultures that value diversity and dialogue, and citizens who understand their role in maintaining freedom and justice. Perhaps most importantly, it has learned to harness the power of the Force, not for domination or control, but for healing, growth, and connection. The ancient dream of balance in the Force has been achieved not through the victory of light over dark, but through the integration of all aspects of existence into a harmonious whole. This is the ultimate vindication of Anakin Skywalker's choice to trust in love rather than fear, to choose compassion over power, and to stand with the light even when the darkness seemed overwhelming. His decision in that crucial moment saved not just the Jedi Order or the Republic, but the very soul of galactic civilization. The story continues, as all living stories must, with new challenges and opportunities, new choices and consequences, new generations discovering their own paths to wisdom and service. But the foundation is strong, built on the understanding that the greatest power in the universe is not the ability to control others, but the capacity to connect with them in mutual respect and shared purpose. And in the quiet moments between the great events and grand gestures, in the simple joys of family life and community celebration, in the daily choices that each being makes to treat others with kindness and dignity, the true victory of light over darkness is renewed again and again. This is the lasting legacy of the choice that changed everything. Not a single moment of triumph, but an ongoing commitment to the values that make life worth living and the galaxy worth protecting. Both twins are shaped profoundly by their parents' example and the stories of the choices that prevented galactic catastrophe. They understand that their abilities and privileges come with enormous responsibilities, that the decisions they make could have far-reaching consequences for billions of beings across the galaxy. The Force flows around them and through them, no longer torn between light and dark, but unified in its expression of the fundamental interconnectedness of all life. They feel the joy of a newly married couple on Naboo, the satisfaction of a successful harvest on Tatooine, the excitement of a scientific breakthrough on Coruscant, the peace of a meditation circle on Kashyyyk. But they also feel the lingering pain of those still recovering from the war's trauma, the fear of those facing natural disasters or economic hardship, the loneliness of those who have lost loved ones to violence or disease. The Force doesn't insulate them from the galaxy's suffering. It makes them more aware of it and more committed to alleviating it where possible. This is the legacy of Anakin Skywalker's choice. The gift he gave not just to his own children, but to all the children of the galaxy. By choosing trust over fear, love over hate, and light over darkness, he broke the cycle of violence and vengeance that had consumed the galaxy for generations. The Sith's reign of terror ended not with their victory, but with their defeat by the very virtues they sought to corrupt and destroy. The story could have been so different. In another timeline, another universe, Anakin might have chosen differently. Fear for Padmé's life might have driven him to embrace the dark side, to strike down Mace Windu and kneel before Darth Sidious as his new apprentice. The Republic would have fallen, the Jedi would have been exterminated, and the galaxy would have suffered under decades of Imperial tyranny. But in this timeline, love proved stronger than fear. Wisdom triumphed over ignorance, and hope overcame despair. The choice of one young man, torn between conflicting loyalties and impossible decisions, changed the course of galactic history and proved that even in the darkest moments, the light can never truly be extinguished. As the years pass and become decades, as Luke and Leia grow to adulthood and take their places as leaders in the Republic and the Jedi Order, the galaxy continues to evolve and grow. New challenges arise and are met with wisdom and cooperation. New opportunities for exploration and understanding present themselves and are embraced with enthusiasm and caution in equal measure. The Force, brought into balance through the triumph of light over darkness, flows freely through a galaxy, finally at peace with itself. And at the heart of it all, the memory of a single moment of choice serves as a reminder that the fate of the universe often turns on the decisions of individuals who choose to do what is right rather than what is easy. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. The legacy of that single choice continues to resonate through the generations that follow. Luke and Leia's own children, growing up in this transformed galaxy, represent the full flowering of what becomes possible when fear is replaced by wisdom, when division gives way to unity, and when the promise of the Force is fulfilled not through domination, but through service. Ben Skywalker, Luke's son, inherits his father's gift for exploration and his mother's diplomatic skills. From an early age, he shows an intuitive understanding of how to bridge differences between cultures and species, using his Force sensitivity not to impose his will but to find common ground where others see only conflict. During a diplomatic mission to resolve a territorial dispute between the Twi'lek colonies and the indigenous Ryloth underground dwellers, 12-year-old Ben demonstrates wisdom beyond his years. Instead of trying to negotiate a compromise between competing claims, he suggests a collaborative archaeological project that reveals the ancient history both groups share, the discovery of a pre-colonial civilization that had included ancestors of both peoples transforms the conflict into a celebration of shared heritage. Jaina and Jacen Solo, Leia's twins with Han, grow up to embody different aspects of their family's legacy. Jaina follows her grandfather Anakin's mechanical aptitude, becoming one of the galaxy's foremost ship designers. But unlike the weapons of war that dominated earlier eras, her vessels are designed for exploration, rescue operations, and scientific research. Her innovations make interstellar travel safer and more efficient, opening up new regions of space for peaceful exploration. Jacen, meanwhile, develops his grandmother Padmé's passion for social justice and his Aunt Leia's political acumen. His Force sensitivity allows him to sense injustice and inequality even when they're carefully hidden, making him a powerful advocate for the marginalized and forgotten throughout the galaxy. These young leaders face challenges their parents' generation could never have imagined. First contact with the Yuuzhan Vong, a species from outside the galaxy entirely, tests every principle the Republic has developed about peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. The Vong's biotechnology and radically different cultural values initially create fear and misunderstanding on both sides. But the diplomatic protocols developed over decades of successful first contacts, combined with the younger generation's openness to radical difference, ultimately lead to a breakthrough that enriches both civilizations. The Vong's mastery of biological engineering helped solve environmental problems that had plagued certain star systems for centuries, while their encounter with Force-based technologies opens new possibilities for their own cultural evolution. The integration of Yuuzhan Vong perspectives into galactic civilization becomes another landmark in the ongoing story of how diversity strengthens rather than weakens complex societies. Their emphasis on living harmony with natural systems provides valuable insights for addressing the environmental challenges that arise as galactic civilization continues to expand and develop. As the first century of the new era draws to a close, the galaxy has become something that would have been unrecognizable to those who lived through the dark days of Sith manipulation and galactic war. Yet the fundamental lesson remains the same, that the choices made by individuals in moments of crisis continue to shape the destiny of all sentient life. The Skywalker family has become a symbol of this truth, but they are not unique in their significance. Across the galaxy, in every generation, ordinary beings face their own moments of choice between fear and trust, between power and service, between darkness and light. The collective result of all these individual decisions creates the moral and spiritual climate that determines what kind of civilization emerges and endures. This understanding becomes the foundation for a new kind of education that prepares young beings not just for careers and citizenship, but for the ongoing responsibility of conscious choice-making. Ethics and moral reasoning become as central to curricula as mathematics and science, because the galaxy has learned that technical knowledge without wisdom can lead to destruction, while wisdom guided by compassion can achieve miracles. The institutions that govern this transformed galaxy continue to evolve and adapt, but they are all built on the recognition that power must serve life, that leadership must be accountable to those who are led, and that the ultimate measure of any civilization is how it treats its most vulnerable members. And through it all, the Force flows freely, no longer torn between artificial concepts of light and dark, but expressing the fundamental unity that underlies all apparent diversity. The balance that the ancient prophecies spoke of has been achieved not through the victory of one side over another, but through the integration of all aspects of existence into a harmonious and ever-evolving whole. This is the universe that emerged from a single moment of choice, when a young man decided to trust in love rather than give in to fear. It is a testament to the power of individual decision-making to shape cosmic destiny, and a reminder that such power comes with profound responsibility. The story continues, as it always has and always will, with each choice made by each conscious being, contributing to the great tapestry of existence. And at its heart remains the simple but profound truth that the greatest power in the universe is not the ability to control the future, but the wisdom to choose well in the present moment, knowing that each choice reverberates through eternity.